I couldn't resist a little Romeo and Juliet style title. And today I want to tackle something that's really difficult as a business owner. And that is deciding whether to grow, how to grow, in which direction, and so on. If we're meeting for the first time, then a huge welcome to the podcast. I'm Sumantha, and I specialize in helping tutors build their businesses in a way that's sustainable, that gives them options for the future, and is lucrative without compromising the impact they make. And this is a topic I feel is the hardest for small business owners, especially when you're running a business all by yourself, because you don't have anyone to make decisions with. And you also naturally reach a pinch point where you just have to take a leap of faith and make some brave decisions if you want to pass a certain growth point. And it's so difficult to know whether that's the right thing for you. On top of that, if you open any social media app and if you follow business coaches and the like, you'll be surrounded by mixed messages. So some people might be saying how success means something different to everyone, and you don't have to listen to people who say you have to grow, and you're absolutely fine to stay exactly where you're at right now. If you're happy, stay where you're at. On the other hand, you might see messages that convey how you must grow, and that means doing things like changing who your target audience is, or building a team, or creating a business. That could be an asset you can sell later on, and so on. And the latter can feel very scary and overwhelming, and it can feel confusing. And so sometimes we just want to revert to thinking, do you know what? I'm fine where I am, and I'll deal with the other stuff later. But the reason I wanted to talk about it today is because there has been something that I've been thinking about for a really long time. And I've realized that many people are thinking about it too, especially since I've been running my bespoke one-to-one accelerator program. And that thing that everyone seems to be talking about or thinking is, how do I protect my future? I remember when I entered teaching from the corporate world, and I entered the profession with a very low salary. I took a huge pay cut. I moved out of the house that I owned and I rented it out while I rented a room in someone else's house. And as a trainee teacher, I was working in the pub to make some more money. And I remember feeling really worried about paying my bills. Now, that was justified because my salary was really very, very low. But I'm going to fast forward over 10 years from that day. I think perhaps I realized this a couple of years ago, and I remember feeling really worried about my bills and my savings and the future. I basically felt the same way that I felt when I was a trainee teacher. However, I was earning more than triple what I was earning as a trainee teacher. And it was a real light bulb moment for me because I realized that if I didn't challenge my beliefs and my thoughts, and if I didn't acknowledge that there was some work I needed to do about money mindset as well, it wouldn't really matter how much money I was making, I would continue to feel unsafe. So when I did delve into this, I realized that the uneasiness wasn't coming from how much I was making now, it was my thoughts about the future. I'm 43 at the time of recording this, and I do think about the possible scenarios that might involve something out of my control. And I worry about whether I would be okay in those situations, whether I'd be financially okay. But there's an added layer in my life because there's a 12-year age gap between my husband and I. He's older than me, and that means that when I think about my future, I'm almost thinking about two different timelines. So, something I came to realize was that these questions around whether I should grow my business, whether I want to make more money, how I want to do those things, they actually weren't about my present moment. My present wasn't why I was feeling unsafe. It was because I wasn't feeling confident that I had built something that was going to protect our future. I realized I hadn't created something that gave me options. And that realization alone gave me so much clarity because now I had identified why I was feeling that way instead of it being a habitual feeling. And I also realized that I needed to make decisions now that were going to serve my future. So deciding whether or not to grow isn't about asking yourself, am I happy with what I'm doing right now? It's about the future. And I want to share that with you because if you're feeling lost or you have this perpetual feeling of uneasiness, but you don't know why, or you do know why, but you're burying your head in the sand, then this is the place to start. Think about the future that you want. You don't have to be really specific if you're struggling to be specific, but think about how you want to feel. Think about the options and the opportunities you want to be accessible. And that gives you a really solid starting point to make decisions about the path you want to go down. It's about creating options. So, right now, for instance, you might be earning six figures, but you may also be working unsustainably. So, right now, you might feel fine, but when you think of the future, maybe that worries you because to be able to continue earning that kind of money, you would have to work in a way that may not feel very realistic. And so you can start making decisions from now that slowly invests in the future that you want. It's that whole thing about doing things now that your future self will thank you for. And this is a really prominent conversation that's happening in my world right now, because if I think about my bespoke one-to-one program, this is what it's about. If I had to choose a criteria that someone almost has to fulfill in order for me to offer them a place on my program, it's that they need to be in a position where they know that they want to make their business more lucrative in a way that protects their future, whatever that may look like, and in a way where we're not compromising on the quality of what we're offering to our clients. That is the one thing that all my clients have in common, even though they might be at completely different positions and starting points. The point is that's the outcome they all want. And I think it's really important. It's really prevalent right now. And when we had discovery calls, the most valuable part of the conversation was talking about the future that they wanted, because that gives us clarity about the pathway and the decisions that they need to make and how I can help them. So, whether or not you work with me, it's a really valuable practice to think about your future without feeling overwhelmed or scared. Don't think about the how. That's the part that's often overwhelming. Just think about the what. What do you want? What do you want to feel? What do you want to be able to do? What don't you want to be doing? I think these thoughts and going down these paths, they get overwhelming in our minds because then we naturally wonder about the how. How am I going to get there? But if you just have faith that you can work out how you're going to get there, then you can focus better on what you actually want. Because unless you identify that, thinking about how you're going to get there will always be overwhelming. I know it will feel confusing because you haven't really pinpointed a destination. Regardless of how old or young you are, thinking about where you want to go is incredibly powerful. And the answer to that question may change as time goes on or as life changes, as priorities change. But when you identify how you want to feel, that rarely changes. So I want to feel safe. And regardless of what happens in my life, I know that I will continue wanting to feel safe. The thing that might change is what I need to feel safe based on what's happening in my life. So once you've decided on what you want from your future, that's when you can start making some really clear decisions about what you need to do now that's going to invest in the future. And when you realize that you're in this position, you realize that all those different messages that I talked about earlier are actually true. They might feel conflicting, but they're actually all correct. Success does mean something different to all of us. Some of us may want to build a team so that we can continue our businesses without needing to work in it all the time. Some of us may want to create something that's an asset we can sell later on if we want to. Some of us may continue wanting to work alone, but still create something that gives us options to work less without compromising on the money we're making later on. What I often say to my clients is that what we're trying to create isn't based on someone else's template of success. It's something that is based on what we want. And we know we're onto a great idea when we create a win-win situation. So let's pause and talk about that because it's important in any kind of sales situation. A win-win is when you are creating something that serves you, and in this case, it's the future that you want, and it serves your clients. and anyone else who's involved. So let's say you're making great money, your clients are really happy, they stay with you, they return, but you're working too many hours. You're struggling to make space for other things in your life. And you know that in a few years' time, you're not going to want to work all of those hours, or you may not be able to. You're in a win lose situation because your clients are happy and you're happy right now, but your future self isn't protected. Let's say, and I know you're not in this situation, but I just want to talk about another extreme. Let's say that you've created something that's really lucrative, but the quality of what you offer isn't very good and people don't come back to you, they don't return. That's another win lose situation because making sales right now isn't the goal. If we're thinking about the future, we're also thinking about things like retention and return clients and people staying with us for a long time. We're thinking about word of mouth because creating a business that's sustainable isn't just about making money in a way where you don't have to work loads. It's also about making sure that you don't have to work loads to make the sales. You don't want to lead a life of hustle all the time. So, our reputation here is the most valuable currency we have. And that's why when I talked about how I work with clients earlier, I mentioned making more money and I mentioned working less. But a very important part of that puzzle is doing that without compromising on the quality of what we offer, because we want to create something that attracts clients to us without us always having to try and reach out and sell like all the time. That's your win win situation. So, when you think about creating that win win situation, and when you couple that with how you want to feel in your future, you're starting to get a semblance of guidance on the decisions that you may need to be making right now. One of the things that applies to almost all my clients is this concept of creating an offer suite. So it's where you essentially have a kind of flagship thing that you sell that relies on you being a specialist. It's kind of the thing you get known for, but around that you have other offers that feed into each other. So if you have a set of interlinked offers, you kind of have this main offer that you're known for. You now know you don't have to consistently be selling because your clients will naturally stay with you because you're serving them at different points in their journey or you're serving different needs. And I teach my clients how to do that by starting with what I call the sellable offer method. And that's just about creating an offer that where you have feeders into that offer as well. So that's an example. It's just an example of how you can really structure things from now to create something that gives you the flexibility in the future, that gives you those options, not even necessarily in the far future, or it could be in the near future. But whatever that looks like for you is also important that it's flexible because how you package things like your offers is going to be different for different people. But the thing that unlocks all of that is understanding how you want to feel in your future, which is why I started with that. So, the thing that often triggers these conversations isn't only when someone isn't sure whether they want to grow or what that may look like. I've also had conversations with people where they have felt intimidated by the growth stories that surround them. It's almost like they feel like, oh, little old me can't achieve that. Those achievements are for other people. And I'd be lying if I said that I've never felt like that in my career. Even now, I sometimes look at people who are super successful and almost feel disconnected from them because I don't feel like that's within my reach. I feel like they're leading a different life to me. But once again, you can cut through that narrative and you can cut through that noise when you focus on what you want. So if I want to feel safe, it's no longer about trying to be a millionaire. It becomes about having an income target and having ideas about what I'm willing to do to reach that income target and what I'm unwilling to do to reach that income target, all within the criteria of how I want to feel. So if I want to feel safe, I'm not necessarily going to make huge and risky investments that may not pay off. I'm more likely to create something that's a little bit more predictable and solid. However, having said that, what I've learned from growth in my own business is that it always comes, those pinch points always come with a leap of faith. That's different from taking a huge risk. There is no watertight way of making decisions that are definitely going to lead to significant growth, where you have absolute certainty that it's going to work in the way that you had planned. And this is a really common wobble that my clients face when they work with me one to one, because the work we do does lead to significant growth. But it also means in order to get there, you have to make courageous decisions. You need to take those leaps of faith. So, yes, we can create safety around our decisions, but there isn't a watertight way of growing significantly. And so, in those situations, I ask my clients to do what I remember doing with my business coaches when I was at that catalyst point. I was really scared to follow the advice they were giving me because it felt bold. It was big. If it worked, the payoff would be big. But if it didn't work, although I wouldn't lose very much, it still felt incredibly scary. So what I said to them was, I'm going to follow exactly what you have said. I'm going to follow it blindly, and I'm scared that it's not going to work. But I'm going to hand that fear over to you. I'm going to trust that if I'm in that situation where it hasn't worked, I'm just going to trust that you'll help me get out of it. And so that's exactly what I offer my clients. When they're worried about the possible what ifs, and when I see that that's stopping them from cutting through the noise and making that significant progress that leads to a significant payoff, I ask them to hand their fears over to me. I'll take responsibility for the fears and the what ifs so that they can take responsibility for taking action that unlocks those great results. And they know I've got their back. If things don't work out, I'll help them navigate. And so if you do experience these wobbles, those moments where you feel scared to make bold moves that you know could really pay off, but you're afraid for various reasons about them not working, see whether you can find a way to hand those fears over to someone. So it might be that you just let go of the fears and you just trust that if any of them were to come through true, you would find a way out of them. It might be that you work with someone like me or a different mentor or a coach who you really trust to help you navigate through those difficult situations if and only if they happen. They rarely do. Either way, it would be such a shame for your future self if fear stopped you from creating that amazing future that you want. Now, I'm going to finish on another but really significant question that I had to ask myself. And being able to answer it was actually the thing that unlocked another zero to my turnover. And the question was, why not now? So for a long time, I knew I wanted to feel safe. I knew I wanted to grow my business, but there was a couple of things holding me back. The first thing was that for 10 years, my husband and I were trying to conceive. Last year in 2024, we reached the end of that journey. But what was happening during those 10 years is that I was responding to a hypothetical what if. So I thought, well, I can't commit to running a 6-month program because what if I fall pregnant? I can't spend £6,000 on business coaching because what if I fall pregnant? There was always this white noise at the back of my mind. So the minute that was lifted and I asked myself, well, why not now? I realized that, well, I could do it now. I could go all in. I could spend the £6,000. I could run the 6-month program because that what if had now disappeared. The other thing that I really felt was, who am I to do this? It felt like, what if other people judge me? What if they think negative thoughts about me? And I even kind of reverted to, do you know what? I'm really happy with my salary right now. I'm really good with the stability I have right now. It's fine. I don't need to take those risks. But they weren't risks. They felt like risks because I was feeling scared. And also, for 10 years, I'd got into the habit of being really cautious and responding to this kind of hypothetical what if. Asking myself that question, why not now, and answering it really honestly was magical. That was the thing that made me say yes to so much that has unlocked not just monetary growth, but personal growth, professional growth, my connections with people, all of it. All of it has been enhanced because I had the guts to say yes. And do you know what? The power of saying yes and going all in really, really paid off. I spent a lot of money on my business coaches and I selected them. I didn't shop around. I knew I wanted to work with them. And it felt like a huge risk, but I knew I wanted to work with them. I asked myself, why not now? I couldn't justify not working with them, so I went for it. And because I went all in without fear, because I handed my fear over to them, I made back that investment within 72 hours. Now, I'm not saying that that's a normal scenario. I'm not saying all of their clients necessarily do that, but that was my experience. And within a week, I had doubled what I had invested in them. And it really proved to me the power of pace and the power of going all in with something rather than feeling a bit shaky, going for the second best option that like I'd done in the past, going for cheaper options, trying to work things out by myself. I realized that making that bold move was an investment. So if you're still with me and you've stayed with me until this point in the episode, then I'm going to assume that at least some of what I've talked about has really resonated with you. And so I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions, a couple of thoughts. And the first thing is, it's not about now. Remember, it's not about now. It's about how you want to feel in the future. What can you do now? What's one step you can take right now that's going to get the ball rolling? How can you make that first step towards that future that you want? And remember, focus on how you want to feel. Don't get bogged down with, but how am I going to make that happen? That will come. There is always so many ways of achieving the same outcome. So you'll find a way. Also, what I found very powerful was the exercise of deciding what I was willing to do for that goal and what I was unwilling to do, because then it wrapped a criteria around it. So if you haven't made those bold moves yet, but you've kind of wanted to, but something in your mind has stopped you, if you've delayed it like I did for so many years, remember that question, why not now? So very quickly, before I finished this episode, I was looking at the numbers recently and I realized that over 80% of people who watch this on YouTube haven't subscribed to my channel. So if you are watching on YouTube, please do hit subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please do follow and pop a little review on, because it doesn't cost you anything. My podcast is totally free and it will remain free, but it does mean that I can reach more people. It means that I can help more people. It really helps out small podcasters like me. So if you can do that right now, that would be amazing. Thanks as always for giving me your time, and you'll hear from me on Wednesday.